Well, America is plagued by the specter of fascist violence, and in an ironic twist, these fascists call themselves anti-fascist, Antifa. Whenever conservatives want to speak on campus or hold a rally, Antifa groups are a reliable presence, and they routinely try to stamp out speech using vigilante violence, which they perversely justify as a form of self-defense. Mike Isaacson is a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. He founded the Antifa group Smash Racism DC, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks for coming on.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
So your position, tell me if I'm mischaracterizing this, is people you define as fascist do not have free speech rights.
No. My position is that communities have the right to defend themselves against groups that actively seek to eliminate members of that community.
Defend themselves against violence, or defend themselves
against violence? I mean, we're talking about...
No, but physical violence? So if I say, for example...
We're talking about a history, a group that has a history of enacting hate crimes. Yeah, no, we're not... Are we going to pretend like we're suddenly in this ahistorical world where Dylan Roof or Wade Michael Page doesn't exist, where Anders Breivik doesn't exist? Are you kidding me?
No. Are you really a professor, by the way?
What?
So here's the question, though. Is it past statements that have espoused violence, or is it acts of violence?
It's
so
both.
could you?
Okay, I mean, we're talking about.
Hold on. Let me just finish my question. Could you commit violence against me if you thought that I had a history of saying things that you imagined were violent?
I would never commit violence against you. I actually, when I was younger, I was a libertarian, and I actually looked up to you when you were a libertarian.
Okay, but let's take me out of this.
Okay.
Let's just, I want to know, like, the concept of self-defense is a legal concept, but it's also got, like, a long history and tradition in common law. So the idea is, if I'm hitting you, if I strike you physically, if I physically commit violence against you, you have a right to commit violence back in order to protect yourself or your property.
Sure.
But you're seeming to say that anybody who has espoused ideas that have at some point in history led to violence can be the subject of violence from you. You're not saying that.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I believe it is the right for communities to get together to assess what is a threat to them and to defend themselves against that threat.
So give me an example. Like, what public figure in America right now could be shut down, could have his free speech rights taken away, and could be the subject of violence under the standards you're describing?
Well, I mean, for instance, I think that the framework here of talking about violence as opposed to talking about preserving the very freedoms that you and I both enjoy is a false one. I mean, ultimately, we're talking about a movement that actively advocates against all the fetters of democracy. I mean, we're talking about Richard Spencer, who publishes on altright.com, publishes an article on July 28th by a man named Vincent Law, where the headline was, "To protect free speech, get rid of democracy." We really have to...
You know what? Okay, so let's use that example. I disagree with that. I haven't seen the piece, but it doesn't sound like something I'd agree with.
It's not.
Does Richard Spencer have a right to speak in public?
Richard Spencer is a danger to society. When he speaks in public, what he is doing, he is publicly recruiting people to his very violent movement, very violent ideology.
So does he have a right to speak in public?
I don't think he has a right to speak in public unopposed, and that is ultimately what the purpose of Antifa is to show up and oppose him.
But it's not opposition. You shut people down, you prevent them from speaking, and you commit violence against them.
Absolutely.
I know a number of people, well, don't tell me it's untrue, I know people who have been knocked down and beaten by people from Antifa. So that is true. It does happen. We have it on tape. We just roll the tape.
Right.
So you're saying, is that justified?
Yes. I believe that communities have the right to defend themselves against threats to their community.
Against ideas they don't like.
No,
they have a right to commit
against
violence.
People who have explicitly said that they want to eliminate those people from our society.
But you're conflating violence with ideas.
No,
if I have not raised my hand
think
to strike you, you have no right to strike me.
But in order to raise your hand to strike me, you have to think that you're going to strike me. And when you are going out in public as a protester, explicitly saying that you want to eliminate most of the people from this country, I believe most of the people in this country have the right to say, no, that's not okay.
Okay, but you absolutely have a right to say it's not okay. What you don't have a right is to prevent me from saying what I think, even if you disagree, and you definitely don't have a right to commit violence against me. And you're blurring the lines there. And by the way, don't you work at a criminal...
Yes, I'm in an economics department, yes.
It's hilarious. Okay, you don't have the right to do that. You have the right to make a counter case. Do you see the distinction that I'm making?
Tucker, when I walked into this building, I counted 5 security guards at the front door and 2 police cars outside. Are you going to tell me that the violence that they would enact against someone who is looking to do you or any number of the people that work here harm, are you going to tell me that the violence that they enact to protect preemptively the staff that are protected also by the barricades that you have?
I don't even know what you're talking. I'm not honestly not following you.
Are you pretend that you don't have security?
Well, I actually don't have security, but there is security at
there's
our
security
building,
in your building, for sure.
And there's
the reason that there is
at lots of buildings
and the reason that there is security in your building
is,
no, the reason that you have security is because ultimately that security provides a space for nonviolent civil discourse, which is ultimately what we want.
But you don't own. Slow down. There are lots of million distinctions here, but you don't own the public square. You don't own the street.
But I believe the public owns the public square. And at the end of the day,
you're not in charge of the public, and you're not in charge of deciding. The public isn't even in charge of public.
Okay. We are talking about a system that has been gerrymandering people out of public representation. Okay, if we're relying on the cops, ultimately those cops are working for the very people that you work for, and not in the interest of the vast majority of society. We don't have representation. We don't have representation by the state. We don't.
Okay, last question. Do you teach students?
I do.
Huh. And do you teach them that the First Amendment does not apply to people they disagree with?
I teach them to think critically, and that's why I'm very open about my anti-fascism and my anarchism.
So if someone in your class said, you know what, I'm a Trump voter, I'm against affirmative action.
I've had those, and I encourage them to research and explore and hold them to the exact same standards that I hold any other student.
Yeah, I bet.
I do.
Yeah,
I had an alt-right supporter actually in my class last semester. Yeah. I worked with him on his papers. He started off kind of bad at citation. I got him better at citation, and he wrote a paper that was an A paper. I mean, I am not discriminating against my students.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
except you think that people you disagree should be beaten up, but whatever. All right, Congressman. Close, Professor. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.